What's next for the LA Lakers? After a crazy season, just a year after winning an NBA championship, the LA Lakers have been eliminated in 6 games in the first round of the playoffs. And now the focus is on what happened to them this season, what went wrong, how can they look to address it, how can they improve this offseason, and what's the long-term outlook of this team as LeBron next year will be entering his age 37 season. Certainly a lot of question marks here for the Lakers, so let's just go ahead and get started. Really quickly though, before we do get started, I'd like to remind people, first of all, what's up? My name is Tucker. If you're new, I upload NBA stuff on this channel every single day. It's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. If that's something you're looking for, consider subscribing, leave a like rating on the video as well if you're enjoying it, and you can check me out at various socials and a link tree link down in the description below. With those things said, let's take a look back at the Lakers season. On February 16th, the LA Lakers were 22-7 in the second seed in the Western Conference. The rest of the season, they were an under 500 team. They finished 42-30 in the 7th seed in the West and lost in 6 games in the first round. That is a crazy turnaround for a franchise and for a player in LeBron James that we have gotten accustomed to an incredible amount of regular season and then, of course, postseason success as well. But we all kind of know what happened with this Lakers team this year. They arguably, from a roster standpoint, were in a better position this year than they were the year before. They added guys like Dennis Schroeder. They added guys like Montrezl Harrell. But when LeBron and AD aren't healthy, this is such a top-heavy team that it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to do anything without those two guys. AD barely played during the regular season. LeBron had the ankle injury towards the end of the year that he never really seemed to fully recover from, and as a result, they slipped down the standings. They faced a really good Suns team in the first round, and they fought, but injuries popped up for them again, and it was just a bad season for them, and unfortunately, none of the guys on the roster really seemed to improve either. Kuzma by the end of the year was a shell of himself from a confidence standpoint. KCP wasn't shooting the ball well at the end of the year. Caruso wasn't making as many winning plays as you came accustomed to for him. Montrezl Harrell was barely playing by the end of the run, and it overall was just very disjointed. There wasn't a lot of chemistry here, and in comparison to that team that won the title last year, they just did not have it together. Now, granted, any team that misses their top 2 players for as long as the Lakers did, that is constructed the way that the Lakers are going to have some struggles. But this season in particular raises a lot of question marks for this team, and we're going to find out this offseason if any of those questions are going to be able to be answered. As we look now at the offseason and the payroll for the Lakers, I personally would expect to see them attempt to make some significant changes to this roster. In terms of players under contract for next season, they've got LeBron, AD, Kuzma, Gasol, KCP, and that's basically it. A lot of other guys, Alex Caruso, Montrezl Harrell potentially with a player option, Talen Horton-Tucker, a handful of other guys, Dennis Schroeder, are free agents. And so whether it be their choice or not, this roster is going to look dramatically different next season. First, we'll talk about the Harrell player option here. I have no idea what he's going to do. He signed a 1-and-1 kind of prove-it deal last year. He's got a $9 million player option for this upcoming season. Coming into the year, it seemed like an almost guarantee that he would opt out of that and get a bigger deal, whether it be with the Lakers or elsewhere. But he was barely playing at the end of the season in the postseason once again. For the second year in a row, he was just not a good postseason performer. And I'm not confident he's getting more than $9 million a year in the open market. Maybe he wants a longer-term deal. Maybe I'm misjudging his value. But his value, in my opinion, is certainly lower right now than it was last offseason. I don't know if he's going to be returning to the Lakers. The other guys you need to pay attention to for this roster, of course, Dennis Schroeder and then Drummond. We'll talk about Schroeder first. This is a player that nobody really thought that they would be able to acquire. It was a great trade at the time. It was like Danny Green and a late first in exchange for Dennis Schroeder, and he was supposed to be the playmaker that was going to take the pressure off of LeBron and allow him to not have to do everything playmaking-wise. And Schroeder had some good moments in the playoffs, but he also had some really awful games. He was kind of doing his own thing at certain points in the regular season as well as in the postseason. And I would imagine the Lakers would want to retain him just because they don't have the ability to replace him in free agency. They're over the salary cap already, even without accounting for some of these new deals. And I don't really know if he fits super well with this roster or if he's someone that really helps them win a ton, but I don't imagine they'd want to lose him for nothing either. So I'd expect them to try and re-sign him. I have no idea what his value looks like. He turned down an extension during the season. He wants to get paid. He wants his money. And I don't know. I don't know if he's going to want to return to the Lakers. And then the other guy is Andre Drummond. It has been reported multiple times over that the Lakers want to retain Andre Drummond in free agency. They see him as a significant long-term piece. They see him as the front court partner starting alongside Anthony Davis. And again, similar to the Schroeder thing, you don't really just want to lose a guy like that because you don't have the ability to replace them. Say what you want about Schroeder and Drummond and Harrell's struggles in the postseason, but when you don't have the ability to replace those guys, you're kind of stuck in a scenario in which you need to retain them, especially when you're a Lakers team that doesn't really have a lot of significant avenues in order to improve the team via a trade. When you're looking at trade options, it's sign and trades potentially for Dennis Schroeder. I don't think anybody's going to orchestrate a sign and trade with Andre Drummond, so I don't think that's an option. And then you're looking at KCP and Kuzma and like maybe your own first round pick this year if you make the move on draft night and are actually able to move the pick. There's not a lot of options here because in a really strange way, the value of a lot of these Lakers players has dropped significantly from where they were at the end of that championship run last year. Everybody was making shots. KCP was shooting the ball well. Caruso was shooting the ball well. Kuzma was contributing in a real positive way. And kind of the way this season has cratered over the last handful of months has also cratered the value of some of the players that you would look to potentially move in this offseason. And to make matters worse, they don't have the opportunity to improve in free agency, which would typically be an avenue in which the Lakers would look to improve because of some of the contracts they have signed, guys like KCP and like Kuzma too, that not only don't have value via trades anymore, but are also holding them back a bit from a payroll standpoint. Now, even though it does look like doom and gloom right now for the Lakers, not only in terms of the way the season ended, but also in terms of how they could possibly improve this roster in the offseason, it's still the Lakers, and they're still going to be able to make moves. They're going to be able to bring guys in on a discount. They're going to use their mid-level exception, and nobody thought they were going to be able to get Montrezl Harrell last offseason. Nobody thought they were going to be able to get Dennis Schroeder last offseason, and they were able to do that anyway. Say what you want about this front office, but they've shown an ability to build a team around LeBron and around Anthony Davis that works to a certain degree, and they did just win a title. You can talk about, if it counts or not for you personally with it being in the bubble. We'll not get into that conversation right now. But you do still have to give them the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion. Even as honestly dire as it looks, LeBron going into an age 37 season, Anthony Davis coming off a season in which he only really played a handful of games, and both of those guys struggled with injuries the entire season. When you have both those guys on the roster, the team still needs to be taken seriously, and they're going to do everything they can to position themselves well for next season. But what I will say is for LeBron specifically, and I know he was dealing with the ankle injury that typically takes a lot longer to recover from than the amount of time that he recovered from it in. This is probably the first time where I've really started to see LeBron be a bit mortal on the basketball court, where he seems exhausted at the end of games. He doesn't really seem like he has the ability to enforce what he wants to do on the court. And he was being guarded well by Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder for an entire playoff series. And granted, health comes into play with this. But my mindset with LeBron at this point has always been, don't doubt him until you see otherwise. Don't doubt the guy until you see him start to break down, until you see him not dominate a playoff series. And I think we can all agree that it wasn't a great playoff series from LeBron, and we can talk about the injury excuses and things like that. But ultimately, it's something you have to start questioning. It's something you have to have in the back of your mind is how much does he have left in the tank? He's got 2 years left on his contract. Will that be the end of the LeBron James era when this current contract is over? I really have no idea. But what I will say is as long as Anthony Davis and LeBron James are healthy, the Lakers are going to be heard from. They're not just going to bottom out. I just don't really see how they make those improvements this offseason when they have so many guys that are free agents, even players like Caruso and Talen Horton-Tucker, Drummond, Schroeder. Like, you might not like a lot of these players, but it's going to be difficult for them to replace them considering they're already over the cap going into the offseason. In terms of the outlook for the Lakers, it's very, very simple. There's a reason they were the second seed in the West when they were fully healthy at the beginning of the year. They were 22-7, even going into the postseason with the injuries that they'd had to LeBron and Anthony Davis. They were still considered by many the favorites to get out of the Western Conference, and it's for good reason. This is still a very, very good roster. Anytime you have Anthony Davis and LeBron, if those guys are fully healthy, they need to be taken seriously. Is it going to be difficult to change this roster and to maneuver in a way that will actually improve it rather than just shuffling the deck? Absolutely. That's 100% going to be difficult, but I'm not counting these guys out yet as long as those two players are on the roster. So the outlook in terms of possible championship contention is still bright next season, assuming those guys are healthy, but the outlook in terms of some hugely significant move occurring this offseason that allows them to, get back up into a team that many consider to be the best in the league coming into the year is questionable. It was a weird year. It's an incredibly quick turnaround for a guy in Anthony Davis that has his fair share of injury struggles and a player in LeBron that is aging and has a huge amount of responsibility on this team. Maybe you could just make the case it was a perfect storm for them this year. Everything went wrong at the worst possible time, and this will just be kind of an outlier year moving forward. But we'll see. I mean, this is 2 out of the last 3 years now that LeBron has been dealing with a significant injury towards the end of the year. A couple years ago, the Lakers didn't even make the playoffs, and he was out of commission by the end of the year because of an injury. And then this year, he was obviously struggling due to the ankle stuff. I don't know. There's just a lot of question marks, more so than I think anybody would have expected by the time this Lakers season ended. I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I don't think that the world is ending in any way there in LA. But I do think that the path has never been less clear from a roster improvement standpoint than it is right now for the Lakers. Let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think the Lakers should do. Leave a like rating on the video if you're enjoying it, and check me out at various socials and the Linktree link down in the description below if you want to hang out with me outside of these videos. With all this thing said, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. Again, my name is Tucker, and I will see you all next time.